deal. We don't want the air blowed.
Yeah.
You
and
know.
outsiders.
Yeah.
Outsiders. And look, Stephen knows, look, I believe the outsider thing. I get it. I get its currency, but it's the wrong coin for the realm.
All right.
What we're seeing with Trump, I know I'm into my hour and Dusty's yelling. I don't give a damn. What I'm saying is, this is an important conversation. Stephen is going to be the hub of conversation in this country. And I just hope that this doesn't distract from his pull in creating conversation. He's a huge asset to us as a society, in my opinion. Anyway,
right.
Thank you for teeing it up, Elizabeth.
You bet.
Appreciate you. Chris Cuomo here. Hey, we're all one family at NewsNation. It's her show. It's my show. If you're watching, you're watching. Great. Welcome to NewsNation. I can now tell you what the Trump tariff gambit started as and what it is now being sold as. What it will become, that I don't know, so I'm bringing in a better mind. Let me start with full disclosure. After close to 30 years in this business, and in law and finance before that, there is no doubt in my mind that culturally, politically, and systemically, workers have been left behind in America on purpose. We now make billionaires and broke people more than anything else. President Trump is now singing this song, but can he hold the tune? Hard to tell, because right now he has us in crazy town again. I don't care what team you're silly enough to support. That's where we all are. Crazy town. What is that? No clear path, no messaging, just madness and making it up as you go. That's crazy town. How else to describe our reality? We're now told that tariffs are part of an intricate strategy with many phases. The president just never bothered to explain it until after he did it, and the markets tanked. Well, we couldn't warn our enemies, his people tell me. But isn't that your posture if you're in an actual war, not a trade war? Almost all the players here are our allies, and you're supposed to pre-negotiate and explain the parameters and the targets and the specificity of tariffs, and most importantly, the duration. They did none of that here. And what they did do, they exaggerated. The math makes no sense. And even more dangerous is that they have not given an indication for how long. And that's why the markets tanked. Okay? Messaging matters. We saw how much again today. This verified X account, whatever that means, named Walter Bloomberg, posts a headline that Trump's top economic advisor, Hassett, said that the president is considering a 90-day pause on tariffs. Traders erupt in cheers. CNBC goes with the story.
I think we can go with this headline from apparently Hassett's been saying that Trump will consider a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except for China.
Except for China.
Oh, well, that's huge. I mean, that changes the game.
Yeah, that changes things. You know why? Because that's not what he said.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide.
So how'd this happen? Well, first of all, Trump administration. You can't just go out on Fox. Most serious people don't watch it. You have to put your people out on all the different platforms when you want a message, especially if it's not going to be top down from the president. So as soon as the market went up on this news, it came crashing back down. This misinformation, and that's what it was, created a $4 trillion swing in the market. This is madness. Okay? This is not a way to get to a better place. Now, I get why the Trump folk are shy about the messaging here. Okay? Right now, his guys sound like the Bernie bros. It's all about the working man all of a sudden and correcting how top-heavy all these corporations are. And if the markets go down while Trump gets other countries to take care of our working men and women, screw them. They've been at the trough long enough. Hey, amen. I smell what you're cooking. CEOs are now making 345 times the worker. In 1965, they made 20 times more. Why has that exponentially exploded where wages have not? So I'm fine with the message. I think it's grossly unfair that corporations get to distribute profits while their workers are subsidized by taxpayers. Billionaires shouldn't be growing more than everything else. But what's the problem? Well, until now, that message isn't new. It just wasn't coming from Trump. He dismissed it as socialist redistribution.
CEOs making nearly 400 times more than the average worker. Unheard of in American history.
He's going to tax you people at 90%. He's going to take everything. And nobody's heard the term communist. But you know what? I call him a socialist / communist, okay? Because that's what he is.
Okay? Here's what I know. I don't know where we're going to go. I'm going to talk to somebody who's much smarter than I am about that. But here's how we got here. The tariff gambit was always going to be, okay? How they did this was a closely held move. And now we know why. Because he knows he was going to meet resistance. He didn't even know that graph till he read it at that press conference. What likely happened here is Trump was pushing tariffs because he believes in the optics, no matter the economics. They make him look strong. He is fighting back. He is doing to them as they do to us. And that's why he did this. And as with everything else he does, if he's going to do it, he wants it to be the biggest, the most, the best. And that's why it's this crazy list and exaggerated notions of the tariffs. He didn't really consult the better business minds around him, which is why Musk may not be the only close advisor to leave because of this. Be aware. He also didn't warn the other countries. He also didn't warn us. So the markets cratered. Now his guys are trying, after the fact, to architect a plan. And they're leaning into helping the base, even if it sounds like they're bogarting the idea from Bernie. But justifying the idea is the least of their problems. So let's say they're right. And they did this because they want to bring back manufacturing. What manufacturing? They act as if America has none. You do know we are the second biggest producer of things behind China, right? You know that, right? So where is all this excess potential capacity going to come from? Why did Trump kill the CHIPS Act if he wanted to seed new information and technology jobs? Ah, yes, cheap politics, right? Negating the past administration. So what is it, just about cars then? So we're going to reopen closed plants? How long does that take? 4 years? Who's going to pay? And who's going to work there? There are nearly 500,000 open manufacturing jobs in America right now. Why? Because we don't have zero capacity. We're at almost full capacity. We have open jobs. And where are you going to get them? With Trump chasing all the migrants out. You see? You can see how after the fact this analysis was. Doesn't make any sense based on their own prior actions. Wouldn't companies need to raise their workers' salaries to entice more to join up? What would that mean for prices? What, are we not price sensitive here anymore? Like Bill O'Reilly says, suck it up, get some discipline, pay more, buy less. That's what you want to do. And production these days is more about robotics than ever. So wouldn't there have to be a period of retraining? Are we set up for that? Why do you think we saw Apple say today they may leave China because of this, but they're not coming back here? They're thinking of going to India. This is about the bottom line for business. Trump has no good answers on any of these issues that need to be solved if he wants the tariff plan to be successful. But that's not what it is. He's hoping to never have to answer any of these questions because this is really a stunt to force other countries to the table, and hopefully soon, because he does not want to own a decline in the markets that creates a delevering event, which my buddy coming up will explain to you, which he cannot stop. This is the only huge market move we've seen downward in our lifetime that was man-made, meaning by one man, okay? Now, can he undo it? Yeah, but not for long. The EU hinted that they're open to coming to the table, but they're also getting ready to retaliate with 25% tariffs. So is China. Now he's threatening another 50% on China. Look, I get playing chicken, okay? I just don't like being in the middle of the two birds, which is where you and I are. So when all this pushback to the idea that this was for the working man came, all these questions I was just asking, a second theory popped up. The tariffs are really, you know what they're about, is cheapening the lending environment. because that's what they'll do, and they'll make it easier for us to refinance our debt and pay down the deficit. Pretty good, right? Pretty good, right? Well, if the goal is to reduce the debt, why does Trump's budget add to the spending problems? Why isn't he insisting on a balanced budget amendment? Why did he cut the taxes for the rich and not pay for them if he's about cutting the debt? Oh, that's right, the tax cuts. Yeah, this is about that too. Now here's a third explanation. Remember I said last week this was coming? Okay, the reporting has borne fruit. This is actually, what is the tariffs about? Manufacturing, making it cheaper to refine. Doing to them what they, but it's really about raising revenue to extend the tax cuts. Who says that? Trump's main advisor.
Tariffs are tariffs, and they do raise revenues. They will, I see them as a tax cut, Andrew, because they're going to help pay for the biggest tax cut in American history.
Tax cut for whom, Brother Navarro? The problem is that the tariffs will be passed along. You got the tax word right, but it's not a cut. It's a regressive tax in the form of prices that will be paid by us, and disproportionately by the working man that they are supposedly designed to help. The tariffs are expected to cost the average American household $4,000 a year. Why? The bottom 90% spends nearly all their yearly income. The top 1% spends about 60%. That means that the working class gets hurt more than the rich, and Navarro knows it. And that is going to pay for the tax cuts? Oh, and then, so if the working class is going to pay for the tax cuts, okay. But then they get the tax benefit, right? For the extent, oh no, because the tax cuts help who? The studies have shown that the top 5% receive nearly half of the benefit from Trump's tax cuts. The bottom 80% gets less than a third. So you're paying disproportionately for the tariff, and you're getting a disproportionately low return on the taxes. Seriously? Something stinks here, doesn't it? And we see it in the reaction. Fox can put up all the Fugazi polls they want, that what he's doing is popular. Maybe with their viewers. But the polls all together don't sample as many people as we saw in the streets in this country this weekend. Reports say nearly 100,000 turned out in D.C., 30,000 in Chicago, 25,000 in Boston, 20,000 in Atlanta, 10,000 in Denver. Nearly 20 blocks of Fifth Avenue in New York City filled with thousands of protesters. Small cities too, 7,000 in Des Moines, 5,000 in Raleigh, 1,000 in Anchorage, Alaska. I guess they didn't get the message that this is all for them. Actually, we know they didn't get the message because Trump never delivered it. Now the real question is, will anyone believe it? We will see. So I need a better mind, okay? And I'm tired of the people who get paid to yap on TV. So I have friends who do finance for a living. They watch the markets and they do it for real, not theoretically to talk on TV, but to live or die by how they keep their own book. So my buddy John McNiff agreed to come back. He's one of my best friends. Happens to be the founder and chief investment officer of Motum Capital Management. He's been watching this because this is his business. So thank you for mentoring me along in real time as we're watching this unfold. What do you make of the argument that we're hearing now? This is all about raising that revenue for the tax cuts and helping the working man. And big rich guys like you just got to suck it up, Johnny McNiff, because you've been at the trough long enough. Let the rest of us eat.
One, I think there's one rich guy in this conversation, and it's not me. Two, the tariffs are inherently a regressive tax hike on the working class. That's a fact. Everyone's price of goods, yours, mine, everyone watching the show right now, went higher the past weekend. That is a tax hike on the U.S. economy. That's the only thing certain about these tariffs. All of the other plans about long-term investment, benefit to the worker, that is all uncharted territory. You highlighted a great point with Apple today around them moving their production to India versus China. They did not obviously say we're going to start and open up a new plant here in the U.S. So the only thing that I know right now is that the U.S. consumer and households are worse off. The balance sheet for U.S. corporations is also worse off. 40% of revenues for the S&P 500 come from abroad, right? So you just tax that as well.
So, but you're a bunch of pigs. And what we're going to do here is create a better rate environment for us to refinance our debt, and that helps the American taxpayer. And those revenues that the tariffs bring are going to extend the tax cuts, and they put more money in all Americans' pockets, which is why Trump's economy in the first term was the best ever.
Okay, a couple of things there to unpack. First, in terms of rates, Scott Bessent has made it a point that getting the 10-year Treasury yield lower is a priority for the Trump administration. And that is where a lot of financing occurs within, whether it's in the mortgage market, corporate market, et cetera. So focusing on that would provide some relief to the U.S. economy. However, it's a huge liquid market. The issue that we're having right now is we're in a period of what is very much everyone's considered stagflation, right? Where we have persistently high inflation post COVID and low growth. The tariffs have hurt economic growth. Estimates right now from Wall Street are it's going to put a negative 1.5% drag on GDP and a positive 1.5% rise on the consumer index CPI. That is stagflation. That puts the Fed in a very tough spot, whether they can lower rates anymore and watching how the economy unfolds, because they have a dual mandate of a higher employment as well as inflation. Their inflation target is 2%. It's currently running about 2.8%. So there's not a lot of room for that scenario to really play out. Secondly, right now the world order is the U.S. is the reserve currency. It is the global head of the markets. We are fracturing our economic relations. You saw today, the Treasury market, particularly the long and 10s and 30s, rise 20 basis points. It is a big liquid market. If you see foreign countries, which are large holders of U.S. debt, start to sell, that's going to put pressure on high-end, on longer term yields as well. So there's a lot of moving parts in this. I think the Trump administration has tried to make this like an elementary math equation, where 1 + 1 = 2. Do the tariffs and you get these positive effects. The reality is this is a lot of butterfly effects that can occur here. And you're seeing a lot of disruption in kind of the world order that we've had in the past in terms of geopolitical and economic ties. And all of that is changing. And it's really hard to predict how it's going to play out.
So it's all about time. I keep hearing from people analyzing the markets and trading in the markets. So what happens if these tariffs are in place? If Lutnick is right and says the president's going to hold on, and this isn't over in a week, what are we looking at a month from now?
So I'm going to take them at their word. This is not going to be over in a week. I do think hopefully you'll start to see some singles get hit with some negotiation, like later in the day today. And actually early in the morning, but you had Bessent come out and reconfirm that they're in negotiations with now up to 70 countries. It was 50 earlier. So I think you'll start to see some negotiations will help. You have seen a lot of selling the past few days in the markets. And I think, you saw a bit of a capitulation trade overnight into this morning. You had VIX spike to 60, which is a very high level. It's still elevated at 45, but there's a lot to work through this. Looking forward, though, I think you're going to be pricing in, well, two things, actually. One, you're going to have earnings coming, right? Earnings season is starting. You're going to have earnings reporting over the course of the next month. I would anticipate that they are fine. The issue that you're going to see, because this is the fourth quarter reporting, is going to be very curious to see the guidance that CEOs give going forward. Reporting has shown that CEOs are becoming very negative on the economic outlook. So that is going to be a guide, I think, to kind of how this is playing out. You're going to see, we're getting tariffs. That knock-on effect of unemployment, higher prices, consumer sentiment. Thursday you have Michigan consumer sentiment. You have CPI on Wednesday, PPI on Thursday. So these data is going to start to come. So the economic data will start to play out over the course of the next month, and we'll go from there and see kind of how it is. But there is no panacea right now. That report this morning, that 90-day reprieve, that's not happening. Tariffs are here, and we're going to have to live to deal with it and see what the economic fallout is from it.
What do you make of the idea, last question for you, that somebody had to do something? the workers just been getting too screwed for too long. All these other countries rape us in these trade deals. At least he's doing something.
I disagree. There has been a trade going on that's called the American exceptionalism trade. And that has been one of the reasons why you've seen the outperformance of the U.S. stock market over the past few years. The U.S. has the most talent, it has the best markets, it has the most liquidity, it has the most friendly investment environment, it has the best companies. And you've seen a real outperformance between U.S., like the Mag 7, we'll just take an example for small sampling, versus the rest of the world. We are doing very, very well. There's this big idea out there that, a trade surplus and trade deficits that's the way it has to be. You should have a trade surplus. Deficits are bad. When you're fueling growth, like you've seen here in the U.S. over the past decade, you're naturally going to be a user of resources. You're going to have to, unless you can produce it all in-house, buy from the outside world to help for steel, various products, manufacturing, things like that, right? It's actually a positive thing to think, particularly in the short term. And long term, there obviously can be issues, but a trade deficit is not always a bad thing. But also trade surpluses. If you do the reverse, right? If we're in a recession and we stop consuming, we start to have a trade surplus abroad, but it's because we're having a struggling economy. So it's not always just this black and white. Trade surplus is positive, trade deficit is bad. So I think you got to keep that in mind. These are very complicated economic markets.
Well, thank you for simplifying it. Where's that door behind you go? Does it go to the markets? Is that like is that where all the traders go? Is that like the trader alley? Is that where you all are?
I would tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
You'd have to kill me?
Yeah, that's right.
You're killing my eyes with all that light bouncing off your hair right now. I love you, John McNiff. Thank you very much for making this understandable. Appreciate
Thanks for having me out. Yeah, see you, bye.
Modem Capital is, by the way, named after me. My nickname is Mo. Thank you for doing that, by the way. Appreciate it. Big investor with him. Big investor. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Coming up over the weekend, hundreds of thousands of people across all 50 states. First question, why am I telling you this? You didn't know this? Why isn't this all over the news? I mean, there are people protesting all over the country against this administration and what it's doing. Why is it ho-hum? Stephen A. Smith is getting more noise than the protests in this country. And let me tell you, I understand why, and I think Democrats should be worried. Let's debate.
Thanks for listening to News Nation on the Go. I'm Senior National Correspondent Brian Entin. We're here for you 24/7 on the News Nation app or on your Alexa. Just say, play News Nation.
Hands off! We gotta be hands off! Hands off! You see what democracy looks like! Show me what a revolution looks like! Hands off! Hands off! Our science! Our science! Hands off! Hands off! Our research! Our research!
So hands off was the organizing mantra. But a lot of this is about workers wondering whether this administration has their back. Now they're being told that it does. But is that what we see in the second term of President Trump's agenda? Now, also, how real is the Stephen A. Smith thing? Here's my take, okay? It's real because that's how desperate Democrats are for somebody who can be disruptive from the outside and get them back in the game. But let's talk to the better minds. Progressive YouTube host Brian Tyler Cohen and Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo, I start with you as a media mentor. I must say, we're a little quiet about these protests in the media. To be honest, all 50 states, you got tens of thousands of people on streets across the country. It is not blowing up in the news. Why?
Well, I don't know. First, let me just quickly say that I think that President Trump averted a crisis of his own making with that great performance in today's marathon press conference. I think that the financial aspect, the stock market aspect of this crazy up and down is going to be better tomorrow than it was today, and it's going to keep getting better. In terms of Stephen A. Smith, he's a smart man. He's charismatic. He's engaging in a way that you don't have. You certainly didn't have with Kamala Harris or Tim Walz. I think he automatically right now leaps To the third place among my favorite Democrats, you have Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, and Stephen A. Smith. I think he's right there in the first trifecta. He's right up. He could clean the stage of any of the establishment Democrats he goes against, except for the two men I mentioned. Stan.
What are you ignoring the protest for, Geraldo? I thought you were a man of the people.
Well, I think that the protests are, to me, they have a feeling that there's a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people have been very personally and profoundly affected by this. My sense is that the vast majority of the people that hit the streets were people who were personally hurt by Trump's draconian policies. His clumsiness, his defiance, his lack of sensitivity, and the fact that they're out of work. In a market, I'm not sure what their prospects are now. They've emptied out all the Department of Education and all USAID and all these other agencies, and my sense is that this is an event that was mostly motivated. My sense is by federal employees, unions, and so forth, Chris.
But I'm just saying, Brian, if we saw this during the Biden administration, all 50 states putting people out who are saying we have a problem with the administration, especially right after, to the extent that any of them have 401ks, given the collapse of the pension structure in this country, their 401ks just took it in the hiney at the end of last week. Should more be made of this?
The media ignores this at its own peril. The reality is that we went through the first Trump administration listening to every single person in a diner somewhere in America, and that was enough to make primetime news. But now when we have millions of people taking to the streets in all 50 states across the country, in many cases, at least anecdotally speaking, bigger crowds than we even saw in 2017, that is a harbinger of things to come. And it's a testament to the energy that is kind of taking hold of the Democratic Party or taking hold of the anti-Trump coalition, which, look, if you look back to 2017 when there were those women's marches, it might have been easy to cast it off as like, okay, you have the opponents to Donald Trump, and of course he's got enemies, everybody knows who Donald Trump is, but that ushered in the biggest margin in modern American history in terms of Democratic overperformance in the House in modern American history. Democrats flipped 41 seats in the House. So again, we ignore what's happening on the ground at our own peril. People have a thirst, a hunger right now to fight, and they're showing it in a lot of different ways, that protest being chief among them.
Now, Brian, quick follow to you and then back to my man, Geraldo. And I don't want to nitpick and I don't want to exaggerate this point, and it was really just in D.C. I saw this, but it was also a pretty big demonstration in D.C. Do you think you guys have learned, stick with the majority, get rid of the pro-Hamas, flying the Palestine flags? That's not where this country is. Everybody's got the right to their view, but that your party should not have Palestinian flags and pro-Hamas supporters kind of pari passu with everybody else in your party.
Look, I know that you have been a vocal proponent of sticking on the right side of those 80-20 issues, and I think right now we have the advantage, so to speak, from the minority, where really the only thing that we should be talking about, as opposed to all of the issues that result in Democratic infighting, the only thing from a political perspective to not engage in political malpractice right now is to focus on those issues that are on, the 80 or 90 side of where the American people lie. And there are plenty of them. It's not like we have to look far. I mean, Donald Trump is taking an axe, Donald Trump and the Republican Party taking an axe to Medicaid and food stamps. They've already laid out in their budget blueprint that they want to cut $880 billion from Medicaid, $230 billion from food stamps, gutting the Social Security Administration from the inside by firing 7,000 employees. How are you going to call and get your Social Security issues resolved if there's no employees there to answer the phones? Veterans getting fired, education funding getting slashed, the National Institute of Health, pediatric cancer research getting cut. So there are plenty of these issues that you can, you stick 100 people in a room, 99 of them are going to be on the right side. And those are absolutely the issues that we should be focusing on right now.
Hey, Geraldo, you say that he helped himself in that press conference today. Maybe. I'll defer to you on that. But he has rolled the dice here. These tariffs are going to be real if he doesn't get out, right away. And the price is going to be borne disproportionately by the people he now says he's for, the working class. How dangerous?
Two quick points. Number one, Brian mentions the demonstrations of 2017 following the inauguration of Trump the first time. They were far more passionate than these demonstrations in the last couple of days. The women's movement, with the women's rights on the table, were with the pink hats and I was in D.C. it was a sea of pink. And with emotions and sincerity, and no Palestinian flags, no American flags flying upside down, all these other issues that are the 20 of the 80-20 formula that you make so well. The other thing is, I was in Japan last week, and there were no American cars there. I looked for them. There was not a Buick, not a Ford, not a Chevy, not a Caddy. I saw Bentleys, I saw Mercedes in Japan, in Tokyo. I didn't see a number. The issue is real. So maybe he stumbled on it. Maybe, he didn't time it, didn't intend it to be out now. The Pakakta, graphic it's not even in alphabetical order. It makes no sense. But it's a real issue. It's a visceral issue. And again, there's the passion. It's a visceral issue. Why aren't they buying ours? And we have to, they're dumping their stuff here. And, I think that, he helps himself ultimately because I believe, as I said before, the market stabilizes tomorrow and works its way steadily back. He announces one deal after the other, Japan and Israel. Now let's get the European Union on board. Let's go after the Chinese and so on and so forth. I think that he is like Dennis the Menace as the president.
Chris, can I
dangerous. But it's also
I'll give you the last word, Brian. I want that to happen, Geraldo. I just don't know it's going to happen as soon as you think. Last word, Brian.
I don't think it's going to happen either, and I think that Donald Trump has been deluded into thinking that everybody is as weak and sycophantic as the people he surrounds himself with. We're already seeing the EU impose retaliatory tariffs of 25%. There's been reporting that Japan and South Korea are teaming up with China to negotiate trade deals. That's not what Trump is looking for here, and it's not going to be as easy a win as he thinks it is. The second point, and I'll just end with this, is in terms of the energy and enthusiasm, sure, people weren't wearing, pink hats and flooding the streets in those, but if you look at how Democrats have performed or overperformed in these recent special elections, we're looking at two special elections that took place in Florida, even though the Democrats didn't win, an average 16% overperformance, 16 points to the left overperformance from where it was in 2024. You look at Wisconsin, there was an 11-point overperformance from what we saw in 2024, very similar to what we saw in 2017. The average overperformance right now is about 10 points. In 2017, in that midterm cycle, it was 11 points.
I don't disagree on the Wisconsin analysis. You have to be careful about red state or blue state analysis because overperformance doesn't mean the same thing because of the cushion of what the eventual outcome will be. But the Wisconsin metric is a real one to watch, but you got to you got to manifest that in your messaging and what you're about consistently over time. Politics has a marketing component, Brian, that is not unlike sales of any other kind, and Trump knows this. You got to get the product in front of people 6, 7, 8, 9 times before they start to grab onto it. This is the same thing. Brian, thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation. Geraldo, I love you. Welcome back from Japan. It's good to have you both. 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
You guys.
President Trump met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, was this about what's happening in Gaza? I don't think so. I think that this is about Iran and what may happen there. Is bombing a real thing, or is it saber rattling? I have a man who knows the region and the risk. Next.
What if Ned knew he could treat differently?
Did our president make plans with Israel today to bomb Iran? Take a listen.
We're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly. I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
I don't think he hates to say it. Iran hasn't responded to the president's latest comments. Remember, he broke the deal. That was the only deal that could be made to have any eyes on what Iran is doing. Will he be able to do better now? I hope so. But I got to tell you, what he's playing right now makes the risks of his tariffs look like penny ante poker. Remember, Iran is run by an oppressive Islamist regime that believes life gets better when you die a martyr. Let me bring in Aaron David Miller, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a former State Department analyst and negotiator for Republican and Democratic administrations. Good to see you, brother. Give me your take on the plus minus here.
Look, I think Trump has two objectives, Chris. He doesn't want a major war with Iran. Remember, this is a guy who ends wars, doesn't start them, with the exception of trade wars, on one hand. And number two, he doesn't want Iran to cross the nuclear threshold on his watch. The last 4 or 5 presidents have wanted the same thing. So the real question is, how does Trump achieve those objectives? I think the only way to do it, if he's serious about what he wants, is through a negotiation. And I think he'll give it a couple months. Then there'll be a moment of truth as to whether or not they're serious, whether or not the Iranians are serious, whether or not there's a balance of interest between the U.S. and Iran on this issue. But I don't think Trump knows right now exactly how he would proceed if Iran basically says no deal. Netanyahu, on the other end, knows exactly what he wants. He'd like to enlist the Americans, not in a joint enterprise necessarily, but in a unilateral strike. We got the B-2 Spirit bombers in Diego Garcia. We got the massive ordnance penetrators, the only munitions that could dig down and get at Iran's nuclear infrastructure. But I'll tell you, it's a risky bet. Radiation leaks, the environmental consequences, then there's the day after.
Having Bibi there, how does Bibi there help? They don't have the range and the munitions, as you suggest, to do the job. America does. So how does this help America's posture, having Iran's sworn enemy at the table?
I mean, I think it creates a certain measure of pressure on the malacracy in Iran right now. Remember, the Israelis have struck Iran twice, and the Iranians have proved toothless and feckless to respond. But again, the Israelis can set back the Iranian infrastructure a year or two. The Americans probably a decade. But there still is the day after problem, Chris, and I'm not sure that's what the president wants.
ADM, when I get more meat on the bones, please come back and help me understand it.
Will do, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for popping in. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. It's great to have smart friends in this business. So you can call them up, get them on to help you understand things better, and me. All right, HHS Secretary Bobby Kennedy Jr. is making headlines again tonight. This time it's fluoride. No more fluoride in the water. It's lowering our IQs. True? Is this the move? Former head of the CDC. Next. Fluoride making you stupid. That's what Bobby Kennedy Jr. says, and he's putting together a task force to work on recommending the government to stop putting it in the water. Let's bring in former director for the CDC, Dr. Robert Redfield, friend of mine and show. Doc, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So fluoride in the water, good thing, bad thing, time to rethink?
I think, Chris, it is a time to rethink, but I think it's important with that emphasis on rethink. Let's look at the science. Let's do it in a transparent way. Let's determine. There is some data that a number of people have looked at, that attention deficit disorder, developmental issues in children can be negatively impacted. But let's look at the data, put it out in public. Let's debate it.
Have you looked at it? What do you think?
I think there's data for developmental problems, Chris, okay? It's interesting that in the old days, when we didn't have fluoride in toothpaste, fluoride was really important in changing cavities in teeth. I know I had half my mouth as a cavity when I was a child. I was constantly in the dentist office having my teeth being filled with cavities. So clearly fluoride did a lot for dentistry. But I would say, once we started putting fluoride in toothpaste, there are lots of places in our country where we probably get adequate fluoride without having fluoride in water. But again, I'm not going to come out and say, hey, it should be eliminated. I say, hey, let's look at the data. Let's have CDC, NIH, EPA put the data out in a transparent way. Let's debate it, and let's see whether we really still need this today. It's interesting that most bottled water doesn't have any fluoride, right? And so you can look at whether we really need it or not, and let's just debate it.
Do you think Bobby is going about it the right way, and what caveats would you offer him?
Well, my own view is, he's on to something really important, which is making America healthy again. Obviously, obesity, highly processed food. I couldn't believe when I heard we spent $10 billion on sodas for kids in school. This is where I'd like to see him focus, but he's obviously got this interest in fluoride. I think, I'm more interested in going after chronic disease, diabetes, hypertension. Sometime you get there and you want to do everything at once. And when you do everything at once, you end up not finishing anything. So I'm more an advocate to stay on the obesity, the highly processed foods, and let's let this fluoride evolve, but he's chosen it to go after it. So let's bring in NIH, CDC, EPA. Let's have an open, honest scientific discussion, see where the data is. My own instincts are that we really don't need it to be compulsory in our drinking water, and that many jurisdictions will begin to take it out, and I don't think we'll be any worse the wear. And it'd be interesting to see in Utah, where the event was today, there's 27 jurisdictions within Utah that don't have fluoride, and there's 2 that do have fluoride. Let's look to see is there any difference in the development of the children that grew up in the things that had fluoride versus not. Let science give us some data here. Kennedy has said, and I do believe him, I'm an advocate for him. I do believe that he wants science to drive the issue. So let's use science to drive the issue.
We'll see. I'm glad you think he's doing it the right way. Let's see what it yields. Bob Redfield, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, God bless you, Chris. God bless.
You too, Doc. See you soon. We'll be right back.
This is News Nation with a trust rating higher than any of our competitors. News Nation is proud to be America's fastest growing cable news network. See for yourself at joinnn.com.